as far as joint, a joint is an articulation. All bones articulate with another bone except for the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is the only bone that it's a special bone. It does not articulate or join another bone. It actually is very important for voice and for movement, for swallowing. That's where the hyoid, so it inserts in a muscle, not bone. Okay? As far as joints are concerned, you can classify it structurally or functionally. I want you to know the functional classification of joints. You know that if you have arthritis, your problem is in your joints, right? The functional classification, that's why I want you to know this. So in the test, maybe I'll say, give me, name two bones that make up your elbow joint, let's say. So you're gonna say maybe humerus and then radius, or humerus and ulna. Oh, by the way, like here, look at, there's three bones here, right? I say name two bones that make up the elbow joint. If you wrote radius and ulna, that's not correct, right? That doesn't make up the elbow joint. One of the bones should be this one. You understand? Okay, and then after that, I'm going to ask you, give me the functional classification of the joint. So you choose, is it synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, or diarthrosis? So synarthrosis, if you forget, you ask me, what do you mean? Then I'll just remind you, okay? Synarthrosis, syn for single. So synarthrosis are immovable joints. And then diarthrosis are your freely movable joints. And then the slightly movable amphiarthrosis. Diarthrosis sounds like dynamic. That's how I try to remember. Very dynamic. And then amphi, like ambivalent. You don't know if you're going to go or not. So amphiarthrosis. So examples of synarthrosis, the sutures of your cranium. You see? There's the frontal bone is articulating with your parietal. Where? At this suture, coronal suture. So this is an example of a synarthrosis. This is example of diarthrosis, right? I can freely move it. And then your pubic joint, right here. This one, the symphysis pubis, this is an example of amphiarthrosis. It's slightly movable to accommodate the baby. You see the difference? Okay? Synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, diarthrosis. So you should be familiar with the different joints. By the way, for me, if you wrote, let's say, mandibular joint, that's good. If you wrote elbow joint, okay. Knee joint, that's okay too. Okay, no problem. You don't need to be fancy or specific with the term of the joints. What I want you to know, really master, are these different movements. Okay? What is flexion, extension, hyperextension? I know you know this. Abduction, adduction, circumduction, uh, this rotation, then you have supination, pronation, opposition. I always ask this part. I always ask this. Only because students are, they always think when you close your mouth, that's flexion. You open your mouth, extension. That's not the correct term that you apply for the movements of the mandible. So the proper term is elevation, depression, and then protraction, retraction. I always ask this because the students always forget this part. They have no problem with flexion, extension, no problem with that. The others, no problem. But this they always forget. And then this one, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, and then eversion and inversion. Again, this one, I I always ask this so that you remember. And you should remember that flexion, this is not flexion extension. That's not the proper term that you apply for movements of your mandibular joint. You have any questions? No questions? And so we're done with all of the skeletal system. Again, the individual bony markings will be tested in the lab exam. Lab exam number 1 is just all histology, and that's your test next week. So we have one more day next week, Tuesday, to review for our lab exam number 1. And on the day of the lab exam, by the way, when you come in, there will be microscopes here. Please don't put your bags or your purses here on the table. When you put your bags here, it will bang the microscope and it will jar your slide already. So put your stuff out there and then you just take the lab exam. Okay, so you can keep looking at your microscopes. And by the way, your grades are already on Canvas. If you don't see it, please let me know right away. You survived test number 1. Now you know how to study, okay?